Winter had swallowed Europe whole. In December of 1944, the Ardennes Forest was no longer a place of trees and quiet hills. It was a frozen maze of death, mud hardened into iron, snow packed like concrete, and roads turned into narrow corridors where men and machines crawled forward inch by inch. The sky hung low and gray, denying the Allies their greatest advantage, air power. The cold was not just uncomfortable, it was cruel. It cracked skin, stiffened fingers, froze fuel lines, and slowed the wounded into stillness. And in the center of that frozen hell stood Bastogne, a small Belgian town, insignificant on any map that did not include war. But in December 1944, Bastogne was everything. 7 key roads met there. Control Bastogne, and you controlled the movement of armies. Lose it, and the Allied front could collapse like a cracked dam. The Germans knew it. So did Eisenhower. The storm breaks on December 16th. Adolf Hitler launched his last great gamble, a massive counter-offensive through the Ardennes. It was bold, desperate, and ruthless. German armor punched through thin American lines, driving west with speed and fury. The Allies were caught off guard. Units were scattered. Communications faltered. Panic rippled through the command structure. Within days, Bastogne was surrounded. Inside the town, the American 101st Airborne Division, along with scattered armor, artillery, and engineers, found themselves cut off. No reinforcements, no resupply, ammunition low, food rationed, medical supplies dwindling, temperatures plunged below freezing. Snow fell relentlessly, yet they held. When German envoys demanded surrender, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe answered with a single word: nuts. It was defiance distilled into 5 letters. But defiance alone would not save Bastogne. Eisenhower's pretend Dwight D. Eisenhower stood far from the front lines, but the weight of Bastogne pressed on him just as heavily. As Supreme Allied commander, Eisenhower carried a responsibility unlike any other. Millions of lives, entire nations, the fate of Europe itself. He was calm by nature, measured in speech, deliberate in decision-making. But behind the steady exterior lived a man who felt deeply the cost of every order he signed. Maps covered the table before him, red arrows for German advances, blue lines for Allied positions. Bastogne was a blue dot, circled and isolated, a symbol of danger and hope intertwined. If Bastogne fell, the German offensive could widen. Supply lines would be severed, the Allied timetable shattered. Months, perhaps longer, would be added to the war. Eisenhower needed a miracle, or at least a man bold enough to attempt one. The general who never stopped moving, that man was George S. Patton. Patton was war personified. Where Eisenhower was diplomatic, Patton was explosive. Where Eisenhower listened, Patton commanded. He wore polished boots, ivory-handled pistols, and a reputation that preceded him into every room. But beneath the theatrics was a mind razor-sharp and relentless. Patton believed in movement. He believed hesitation was death. He believed speed saved lives. And above all, he believed he was meant to fight, destined even to shape the course of history. When news of the German offensive reached him, Patton did not panic. He calculated. His Third Army was pushing eastward, driving hard into Germany. Turning north would mean disengaging, rerouting supplies, shifting thousands of vehicles on icy roads, all while the enemy advanced. Most generals would have said it couldn't be done. Patton did not. The meeting that changed everything. In December 19th, Eisenhower called a high-level meeting in Verdun. Snow fell outside as the most powerful military minds of the Allied war effort gathered around a long table. The situation was grim. Eisenhower spoke plainly. Bastogne was surrounded. The Germans were advancing. He needed an attack from the south fast. Then he turned to Patton. Double quotes, how soon can you attack? Patton didn't look at the map. He didn't hesitate. He didn't calculate out loud. Within 48 hours, the room went silent. Some thought Patton was posturing. Others thought he was insane. 48 hours meant turning an entire army 90 degrees, coordinating fuel, ammunition, food, and support on frozen roads. Under enemy pressure. Eisenhower studied Patton carefully. You really mean that? Patton nodded. I can do it in 48 hours. I've already issued the orders. Eisenhower later admitted that this moment changed everything. Not because of bravado, but because Patton had already prepared for the impossible. A prayer for weather. Even Patton knew speed alone would not be enough. The skies were closed. Clouds grounded Allied aircraft. Without air support and resupply, Bastogne would fall, relief or not. So Patton did something unexpected. He prayed. He ordered his chaplain to write a prayer for good weather and distribute it to the troops. Thousands of soldiers read those words in frozen foxholes, some scoffing, some hoping, many believing, and then miraculously the skies began to clear. The dash north. Patton's Third Army moved like a force possessed. Columns of tanks and trucks ground through snow and ice. Engineers worked around the clock to clear roads. Drivers slept at the wheel. Men marched with frozen feet and burning resolve. German resistance was fierce. Villages became killing grounds. Forests echoed with artillery fire. But Patton pushed harder. Attack! 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 Was his constant order. Every mile gained was paid for in blood. Every arm mattered. Inside Bastogne, the defenders listened to distant artillery and wondered if it was salvation or doom drawing closer. Breakthrough. December 26, 1944. The impossible happened. Elements of the 4th Armored Division broke through German lines and reached Bastogne. Tanks rolled into the perimeter. Supplies followed. The siege was cracked. Men who had endured days of hunger, cold, and constant shelling wept openly. Others simply sat down in the snow, too exhausted to speak. Bastogne still had to be held. The fighting was far from over. But the town was no longer alone. Word raced up the chain of command. Bastogne had been reached. What Eisenhower said when the message reached Eisenhower? He did not cheer. He did not raise his voice. He did not celebrate with dramatic flair. He closed his eyes for a moment. The weight lifted. Then he spoke quietly, words remembered not for their volume, but for their meaning. This is one of the greatest achievements of the war. Later, he added something even more telling. Patton has done what no one else believed could be done. It was not just praise for a tactical victory. It was recognition of something deeper, the power of preparation, belief, and relentless forward motion. Eisenhower understood then that leadership was not about caution alone, nor boldness alone, but knowing when to trust the man willing to move when others hesitated. The cost and the meaning. The Battle of the Bulge would rage on for weeks. Thousands more would die before the German offensive collapsed. But Bastogne held, and when it held, the German gamble failed. Patton's breakout did not just save a town. It saved momentum. It saved morale. It reminded the world that even in the darkest winter, resolve could burn hotter than fear. Years later, historians would debate tactics, numbers, logistics, but soldiers remembered something simpler. They remembered being cold and surrounded. They remembered believing help might never come. And they remembered the sound of tanks breaking through the snow. Why this story still matters. The story of Bastogne is not just about war. It is about preparing for the impossible before you're asked to do it. It is about moving when others freeze. It is about leadership that trusts action over excuses. It is about faith in planning, in people, and sometimes in something higher. Eisenhower led with wisdom. Patton led with fire. And together, they proved that history bends not to comfort but to courage. When George S. Patton broke through to Bastogne, Eisenhower did not just see a military victory. He saw proof that when resolve meets preparation, even winter can be conquered.